We can't hear you, Mary. I'm not sure why not. You're a little frozen. So, okay, Mary, I'm going to go on and read the introduction for our speaker tonight, Tricia.
Oh, I have a solution. I have a solution. She
Yeah.
come over here and sit in my station.
Yeah, Mary, if you want to move to Bill's computer, okay, yeah, that'll work. So while we're waiting for Mary to get here, just one second, Mary. If you're just joining us, I posed a question at the introduction asking you your opinion about the frequency of the Wednesday seminars. Would you like to continue every week, or would you like them in the new year, 2021, would you like them less frequently? Thanks. And if you would post that in the chat. Okay, Mary.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Good. It's my pleasure to introduce Tricia LeBlanc, old-time friend and also a fellow master naturalist. Tricia is a native New Orleanian. She graduated from LSU with a master's in education and has spent the past 25 years in environmental education and conservation work, developing and implementing numerous educational activities, workshops, and youth programs. She's been awarded the Louisiana Science Teacher Association's Informal Educator of the Year Award and served as president of the Southern Association of Marine Educators, as well as a board member of the National Marine Educators Association. In 2019, she served on the team representing the city of New Orleans at the Children and Nature Network's Leadership Cities meeting, and continues to serve as a team member as part of the Leadership Cities initiative. In her career, she's worked with NOAA and NASA and has served as a curriculum advisor to the BBC. A member of the Louisiana Certified Master Naturalist, she enjoys hiking, walking her dog, cooking, and expanding her knowledge of nature. She shares a home with her husband, Andre, their son, Jake, one dog, 2 cats, and 2 tortoises, who are named for her love of David Bowie, a red-footed tortoise named Ziggy Shelldust, and an African sulcata named Major Tom. And it's my pleasure to introduce y'all tonight to Tricia, where she's going to tell us about the Sankofa Wetland Park and Nature Trail program. Tricia, if you'd like me to, I'd keep an eye on the questions in the chat for you. And maybe when you finish, we can kind of go through some of the questions that you haven't answered through your presentation.
That'd be great. Thank you, Mary. Thank you
Thanks.
so much. All right, let me share my screen. Actually, hang on just a second.
So remember to click at the bottom, Tricia.
Yeah, I'm trying to, hang on just a second. I gotta make that go away. Okay, there we go. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on just a second. Technical difficulty. I forgot to do something. I forgot to do exactly what you told me to do. Okay. Okay, now we're ready. Sorry about that. So thanks for inviting me to speak to the group. I really appreciate the opportunity. I am the, as Mary said, my name is Tricia LeBlanc, and I am the Wetland Park Director for the Sankofa Wetland Park and Nature Trail, which is the project that I've been working on for the past few years. And I'm gonna introduce you to that project and talk to you a little bit about some of the programs that we have going on there and some volunteer opportunities that some of you might be interested in participating in that we have going on at the park that might be of interest to some of the master naturalists that are in the group. Okay, hang on, for some reason. I can't get it to advance. Hang on just a second. It will not advance. Let me try this again. I'm sorry. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, there we go. So just to give you kind of a general overview of Sankofa, our vision and our mission that guide all of our programs are, you know, we want to create a world where health and well-being are accessible to all, and we're looking to build healthier communities for generations to come. So a lot of our work is focused on equity issues and social determinants of health and things along that line, both environmental as well as, you know, people's personal health and well-being. So just to give you a quick overview of some of the programs that we have beyond our wetland park, we have health and wellness classes that we run for senior citizens. We teach diabetes and cardiovascular education classes in partnership with Tulane University, and some of the medical students over there come over and volunteer their time to assist us. Part of those classes involve cooking as well as some exercise. So we're trying to teach the senior citizens that attend the classes about healthy lifestyle changes that they can make to lower their blood pressure and improve their blood sugar levels. And then the Tulane students will monitor changes in those levels as they go through the class, and hopefully we'll see some changes and improvements in their blood pressure and their sugar levels. We're also developing a brick and mortar produce market on the corner of St. Claude and Forstall in the lower 9th Ward. We were running an open air market, which is the picture you see here, but we are looking to expand that space and turn it into an actual larger and like I said, brick and mortar enclosed produce market, because if you're not aware, there is really no opportunity to purchase fresh produce or really groceries in the lower 9th Ward. You have to drive to Chalmette and the Walmart there. That's the closest big grocery store. And so a lot of people in the lower 9th Ward, you know, they don't necessarily have their own vehicle. They use public transportation or they'll use bikes. And so not having access to fresh produce in their own community, in their own neighborhood, it is a problem from a health perspective. So we want to be able to provide that to that community. And so that's another project that'll be breaking ground within the next few months. We also have garden spaces. So we have a community garden space on North Rampart and St. Claude Court, where community members can adopt beds, and they are welcome to tend to those beds and plant whatever they like and harvest whatever they like, and the gardeners will share with each other if they, you know, have an abundance. A few months ago we had an abundance of cucumbers and zucchini, and for a while we had okra coming out of our ears. Everybody was wanting to share their okra and donate their okra because everybody had way too much of it. So you know, we have that space as well for people to have the opportunity to garden and grow their own fresh vegetables there if they like. And then we have another garden space on Tennessee Street, which is a large garden space. It's about 3 or 4 lots put together, where we have some larger high tunnels. And that's where we do our own sort of gardening. We have a beehive out there. This was at a time where we were growing flowers, and we were giving those cut flowers away to people, to mothers for Mother's Day. We've also grown fresh vegetables in there, and I think we're getting ready to plant some more fresh vegetables in there. Because the other thing, the one thing I don't have a picture of here, is we also are a Second Harvest food pantry. And so what we want to start doing is growing some fresh vegetables in these high tunnels to just add to the pantry boxes that we are giving away to clients at the food pantry. So that's what the Tennessee space is going to be for. And we just, like I said, the Mother's Day bouquets that we gave away to mothers who came to the pantry, and when they came to get their box, they got a little bouquet of fresh cut flowers. So those are the other programs that we do outside of the park, just so you have an overview of Sankofa in general. And then here is the wetland park itself. So it is a 40-acre tract of land. It's a very linear piece of land. It's like a big, long kind of rectangle. It's about 1.5 miles in length, and it's right on Florida Avenue. This street right here is Florida Avenue. This is some railroad tracks and a levee, and then all this over here is what's known as the Bayou Bienvenue Triangle, which at one point was, a very long time ago, was a freshwater bald cypress swamp. This whole area was a freshwater bald cypress swamp. And then over time, with the opening of Mr. Go and different things, saltwater intrusion caused this area to die off. And this area was just turned into kind of grass. There's some sewage and large sewer main pipes that are underneath the ground at the front of the park area, kind of under the road right away. And it was just city property that was just grass, and just they would come and they'd mow it and they'd tend to it. At one point, a very long time ago, I understand from senior citizens that live in the lower 9, they remembered being, there used to be ball fields and things on here and concession stands, and kids would play on those grassy areas. So it was almost like kind of a Nord Park area here, but not a natural space when they were kids. That would have been much further along. So it's 40 acres. It is deteriorated now since Katrina. After Katrina, the city was not able to continue to maintain it. And so it just turned into 40 acres of blight. Chinese tallow came in and took over a huge chunk of it. And in addition to that, it became a dumping ground for piles of tires, old cans of paint, sofas. At one point, there was a boat just left on Florida Avenue. Just stuff that people didn't want, and they didn't want to have to bring it haul it to the dump, so they would just come here and leave it on this piece of property. It's stuff we're still cleaning up. Every time we go out there, we're still cleaning stuff up. So what we're turning it into is, first and foremost, it's a green infrastructure system that we want to create. And, we're hoping that it highlights that role that wetlands play in, of course, reducing land subsidence and improving that water quality that we want. And then, of course, protecting that area, that community from flooding and issues related to storms and hurricanes. We also, again, like I said at the beginning, Sankofa is all about health and well-being for the community. So we consider this project a health and wellness project for the natural environment, and by extension for the community, creating the space, because it will improve the quality of life for the community that lives adjacent to the park. It will give them a place to have a green space, to hike, to bike, to get some physical activity. It's also going to improve their health and wellness by reducing the threat of flooding and street flooding in their area when they have, strong storms or hurricanes. So all of that is why we consider this a health and wellness project, as well as an environmental project. And then we also want it to be a public collaboration and partnership with the community. And I'll get into that part of it a little bit later in the presentation. And obviously, we're going to use it as an educational opportunity to teach families, students, anybody who wants to participate in any kind of educational programs that we're offering about wetland ecosystems and their importance and their value and why we need to preserve these spaces. So here's a map of where exactly we are in terms of the lower Ninth Ward. So this is the north side of the lower Nine. Here's the Bayou Bienvenue Triangle right here. It's just big open water space right here. And this is Florida Avenue. And then this is the length of the park right here. So this little oval represents 2 acres of the pilot project that was done back in 2017. And then all of this is what remains to be completed and developed. So we've still, got the bulk of the park to finish, but we're working on it as we speak. So here's the timeline. So in 2015, Sankofa got a grant from the Sewage and Water Board for a green infrastructure project, and it was to develop this little 2-acre patch right here. That was the test case 2-acre site, to just kind of see how this would work, if it would work. So we put together an advisory board, 2 wetland ecologists, one from LSU and one from Southeastern, were critical to helping us sort of design this project out and sort of determine what was going to be the best system for this green infrastructure project. And so that took a couple of years of planning and design. And then in 2017, we were able to complete that 2-acre project. And in the course of that 2 acres, we were able to remove 400 Chinese tallow trees and then replant or plant in their place 300 bald cypress and water tupelo trees. So it was a lot of Chinese tallow that came out of there. Then in 2019, we were able to continue with what we're calling phase 1 of our development, which is an additional 6 acres of land, and that's actually what that drone flyover is. So this whole body of water stretches to Tupelo Street, which is this 2-way street right here. So this is an additional 6 acres that we have excavated and created this additional bioretention pond. So now we're able to store 1.2 million gallons of water. The first little 2-acre plot was able to store at its maximum capacity 400,000 gallons. So now we're at about 1.2 million gallons of water that we can store maximum. We received some funding in 2019 to kind of help us keep the project going forward. And then I'm happy to say this year we are moving forward with going all the way. Actually, COVID slowed us down, obviously, as it did everybody. But we were very happy that we were able to get some CPRE funding at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And that funding is going to be enough that will let us finish out the entire park all the way to the full 40 acres. So we're working on that right now. And our plan is to have the entire park completed somewhere by the end of 2020. We have to plan when we excavate because we have to plan it when we only have a couple of short windows in the fall and the spring when we get into those dry seasons, because when we have that heavy equipment out there and we're in the middle of a rainy season or kind of a rainy part of the year, which is a lot of year, we can't dig because the soil out there is so dense and heavily clayed soil that it turns into gooey, sticky wallpaper paste, and you can't move a machine through it without sinking your machine into it. So we just have these tiny little windows in the fall and the spring where we can excavate, and so when they hit, we have to really kind of move and make the most of them. So we're hoping to be finished by the end of 2021. So our design approach, these are our wetland ecologists that were working with us, is kind of an organic approach. So the first thing that our advisors did was they went through the area kind of surveyed what was there in terms of the tree species and where they were located. They also looked at sewage and water board maps and looked at the hydrology and kind of the flow of how the water moved through that system, and thinking in terms of what's going to be the best design to capture that water, that street runoff, rains, and that rainwater, and capture it into those bioswales, and kind of tap into that. So there are some ditches at the front of the pond, at the front of the park, that we just kind of created some weirs. And so when the water runs off from the street into those ditches, instead of just collecting there until they overflow and then they run back into the street, the weirs guide that water into our bioretention ponds. And we're also just collecting rainwater in there as well. So once the tallow trees were cleared out and we kind of knew where the trees were that we wanted to keep, then we went through with the excavators and kind of dug out those ponds like you see in these two pictures on the right. And the ponds are, the big ponds are probably 10 to 12 feet in the middle, and they sort of grade out to the edges and get, shallower as you get closer to the edge. But at their deepest, they're probably at 10 to 12 feet in the middle. And then went back through and once the ponds were dug, planted our cypress and tupelo trees along the water's edge. And so what we're shooting for is something that looks like that. So this is a portion of the completed pond that was dug in that additional 6 acres, that sort of phase 1 after the pilot session. So we left a little island there. We call this island Willow Island because it's just full of willow trees, and there's some cattails in the front. We have several birds that are very fond of this little island. There's a great blue heron that sits there all the time. I've also seen some egrets on there, but there's one particular heron that's very fond of this island. So this is kind of what we're hoping to see across 40 acres when we're done. We are also very lucky that we have a fantastic partner in our National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Program. That is a program the National Park Service offers to non-national park entities, municipalities, or nonprofits like us to help them with their master planning and design process for a park space. So it's National Park Service employees who are landscape architects and city planners and people who have experience with this kind of work. So we are very fortunate to have them assist us with this master planning process for the park. And so this is the most recent conceptual design that we're working with, and I'll sort of go through how our master planning process worked in a minute. But this, you can see, is our one long bioretention pond that when it's complete, we estimate it should hold about 8 million gallons of water. We'll have, a grassy, treed, bushy area in the back behind it. And then in the front, we want to have a multi-use trail, which will be our main hiking trail. It's also going to be our maintenance truck road, so it'll be a pretty significant trail. That'll be planted with all sorts of native trees so that as the trees grow, you'll have a nice forested trail with some nice shade to walk under. And then we'll have all these little soft looping trails that'll kind of go back and forth between the multi-use trail and the water. And we also want to put a trail along the water's edge as well, so you can kind of either walk the water's edge or walk inside the little forested trail, or you can, kind of go back and forth between the connections and the loops that we're going to make. We also plan on having fishing piers. One of the things that we heard from the community members that we met with was it's been a very traditional sort of cultural thing for the community to use this area for fishing, and they would like to see it put back. So we've already been talking with Wildlife and Fisheries about stocking our bioretention pond once it's completed with whatever species they deem appropriate that we'll put in our ponds so people can come out and enjoy some fishing. We do have some other areas for nature play and educational areas. We've got some learning garden and interpretation areas. And then we want to put in an amphitheater where people could gather to have, summertime concert series or educational programs, or we're even thinking, it would be a great place to have like a nice yoga class. So we're just kind of thinking about all those different ways that people can use the space. And then of course, picnic areas. We want to put up a big observation deck here, tall enough so that you can see over the levee and you'll be able to see the open water that's on the other side. There are tons of birds that are all over this side. Osprey, cormorants, any kind of duck you could think of, they're all over there. So it's just a great way to have an observation deck to see on that side, because there is a railroad track that runs along here, and so we don't want people crossing that track to go observe the birds. That's just not something you want to encourage. So the way we got to this master planning concept was through a lot of community engagement. We wanted this park, and we want all of our projects and activities and programs to be a partnership with the community. We really don't want to create something sort of in our own little office, in our own little vacuum, our own little bubble, and then present it as if, well, we've decided this is what we think you should have. That's not gonna really be a successful way to present a program. It's not gonna necessarily be a successful program that way. So we do a lot of community engagement, and really all of our programs are partnerships with the community because of that. So this is one way that we also did that with our master planning process. So this is Russell over here on the left. He is with the National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Program. He's our direct partner with that, and he flew down to New Orleans on 2 or 3 different occasions where we scheduled about 8 or 9 meetings around and throughout the Lower Ninth Ward community, and invited anybody who wanted to come to hear about the park and provide us with feedback about what they wanted to see at the park. And, we just did it in very simple ways. This is one of the ways that we did it. We had different posters with different ideas, and we gave people at the end, after we talked about the park, we gave everybody 3 different dots, and there were maybe like 8 or 9 posters, and we just asked them to stick their dots on the posters and kind of vote for their top 3 things. And then we took that feedback back to the office and kind of tallied the results. And so that was a big learning experience for us in terms of understanding what the community wanted in that park. And fishing and canoeing and programs for kids, those were all overwhelmingly, in the top 3 or 4 of what people wanted to see at the park. We also work a lot with a variety of partnerships, both within the city and then just with other nonprofits and with church groups and other agencies throughout the Lower Ninth Ward and the greater New Orleans area. So these are just some of the partners that we've worked with. There's a couple, this needs to probably be updated, because we're now also working with Engineers Without Borders, which is an engineering group that does pro bono work for nonprofits. So they're coming on board to help us with a couple of projects, and the park is one of them. And then we also are talking with and getting advice from the Louisiana Land Trust. They're helping us out with different things that we might need to navigate And so they've also been a great resource for us too, an advisor. So the educational programs that we offer, and all of the pictures you see, unfortunately, they were all, of course, before COVID. So we were developing partnerships with local schools. We had actually gotten an EPA Environmental Justice Grant to work with New Harmony High School, which, if you're not familiar with that school, it's a very innovative school, and its idea that schools should be project-based, and so they want their kids to be out of the school building more than in, and they do a lot of project-based learning outside of the classroom. And their curriculum is based off of Louisiana wetlands, and so they do a lot of environmental education based on local habitats. So we partnered with them and worked with their 9th grade students, and they did water quality monitoring for us. So right here, these students are learning how to do a turbidity test with a turbidity tube. They also took pH and temperature and some other basic measurements just to understand how to monitor a water system. And they also helped us build a rain garden. They helped us do species identifications. So we had them out to the park on a regular basis. And then COVID happened, and that all kind of went away. The other partnership that we were developing was with Arise Academy's kindergarten class, which is this little gentleman right here is from that class. So we were working with Arise Academy on a regular nature play, nature engagement program for their kindergartners. And we had them coming out once a month. And each time they would come, we would do a different activity, you know. So one time we talked about birds, and another time we talked about mammals, and we were going to talk about bugs, and we were going to talk about flowers and plants, and we kind of had it all themed out. And unfortunately, we didn't get to finish with them either. But the few times that they did come, we absolutely loved it. And both of these partnerships were wonderful for us to have those educational experiences with these students, and we were kind of on a roll, sort of getting these sort of partnerships off the ground, and then COVID happened. So we also were doing family programs. So this is Miss Paulette and her granddaughter Chloe, and they came out and did a nature hike with me once, with some other young children and another group, and so all of that kind of ended again, like a lot of us, with COVID. And so what we started to focus on, and what we're trying to build on, is emphasizing another sort of aspect of the park, which does go back to our mission of health and wellness. And we looked at the fact that the population of children in the lower 9th ward, you know, if you look at the circumstances under which they live, the lower 9th ward income level is on average lower than, of course, the average US, but it's even lower than the average income for the rest of the city by a pretty good margin. And you can look at other factors that you know, you can look at, like what I talked about earlier. You know, there's no grocery stores in the area where you can get like fresh, healthy produce and food. So there's some food and nutrition issues there. And so we kind of thought about how kids that grow up in this community, they're with everything they've got going on, food, you know, nutrition issues, other social determinants of health issues, they probably are living, and their families are probably living under just kind of a chronic cycle of stress. You know, mental stress, physical stressors, just kind of on this treadmill of stress. And so we are looking to devise programs now where people can, and then you add COVID to that, where everybody's, you know, not at school or just starting to get back to school, or they're out of work, and so that definitely ups it, as we all know. And so we want to, again, use the park as a place of mental restoration, physical restoration, health and wellness for families to get out in nature and just be. So we're looking to create programs that will allow people to explore the park with their families. We're not necessarily with these programs looking to make sure they learn the name of every insect or bird that they see. This is just more about creating a space for them to appreciate the time they have in nature, create wonderful memories out in nature, and encourage them to enjoy the space, and then hopefully come back and appreciate that time that they had outside, and hopefully it gives them some time to relax and sort of decompress from whatever is going on. And then maybe that will lead to, you know, sparking an interest and creating strong memories in nature that will, you know, have them then develop that interest in nature and that love of nature, and then we can kind of take it from there. So that's what we're focused on now in terms of our programming. And this little guy, they were making camouflage vests. So that's what that is. It's a grocery bag. So we talked about how animals camouflage. And so they went out in the park and they found sticks and flowers and whatever, rocks and whatever they could find, and they glued it to their little camouflage vests so they could try to blend into their surroundings like animals do. So that's what it is. He's wearing his little camouflage vest, like an animal wears its camouflage. So we do have a lot of creatures out at the park. I've seen lots of little crawfish chimneys all over the place. Lots of butterflies flitting around right now. Lots of other insects all over the place. We've got lots of turtles, tons of frogs. I hear bullfrogs, I hear cricket frogs, I hear all kinds of frogs all the time out there. And I always, unfortunately, startle a turtle when I'm out there. I hear them splash and, you know, die for it whenever I'm walk out there. So I apologize to all the turtles I've startled when I walk out there. And then, of course, we've got swamp rabbits like you wouldn't believe. They are all over the place. We have a swamp rabbit metropolis out there. We recently put up camera traps. The camera traps were to catch wildlife. They also were a cheap and inexpensive way to have some kind of security cameras out there right now until we get something a little bit more permanent. But we have caught some little guys on camera. We caught this little fella the first night, just tootling by our storage unit, neat as you please, enjoying his evening walk. We've also caught egrets walking by the cameras. We have caught so many bunnies on camera that I have stopped collecting the bunny pictures because I could have so many bunny pictures. It would probably take up, I don't even know how much room it would take on my computer. There's a million bunnies out there. What's interesting is it'll alternate though. So on nights that we see bunnies, we don't see coyotes. And on nights we see coyotes, we don't see bunnies. So I'm not sure who's, you know, obviously the bunnies are smart enough to stay away from the coyotes, but the coyotes are definitely out there looking for bunnies. So it's just kind of interesting to see that. So we've seen possums on there. A lot of bunnies though. And occasionally the odd naturalist out there doing some birding early in the morning with his camera set up and his binoculars. So we have seen those. We also have a bat monitoring program out there. Dr. Craig Hood from Loyola has set up a bat monitoring station out there and has collected some pretty cool data. So I'm going to go ahead and start this video he very nicely made for us that kind of shares some of the information he's been able to collect at the park about the bats that we have out there.
Okay. Hello, I'm Dr. Craig Hood from Loyola University, New Orleans. I'm a bat biologist, and I'm here at Sankofa Wetland Park and Trail. We've had a bat detector here installed at Sankofa for over 6 months now. We've detected over 8 species of bats. We're going to make our way over there and do another download of the data. The whole point of collecting data on bats here at Sankofa is to find the bats that live here and fly over our area and Sankofa Wetland Park specifically, but in the lower 9th Ward as part of the Southeastern Bat Monitoring Program that I direct. So just in a moment, as this video continues, I'll show you the detector, and then also I'll show you some of the bats. Hello, Dr. Craig Hood from Loyola University again. And for those of you that visit Sankofa Wetland Park and Nature Trail, of course, in the lower 9th Ward, you can see right here the park that you know and love. Our bat detector station is right here, and it's actually on the far bank on the other side of the lagoon from here. What you see at the bottom is a call of an individual bat. This is the yellow bat that's flying overhead, sending out a stream of calls. And you'll notice at the beginning they're very uniform, and then all of a sudden they change. And bats do this when they're feeding. So not only can we identify what species of bats are flying overhead because there's sort of a unique sonogram for the different species, but for each species, but we can also identify if they're feeding or not. So here at Sankofa, there are bats flying overhead, but also bats feeding over the lagoons. Flying insects that they're catching on the air. So here I'm going to show off a few of the bat species. What we see here are 12 species of bats that are known, have been documented in the state of Louisiana, and there's a couple of these that are found only in northern Louisiana, northern and north central Louisiana, that are basically northern bats that have just made their way into the state, and that's the silver-haired bats and the northern long-eared myotas. But these other bats are potentially found in southeastern Louisiana, and I've annotated that, in fact, all 10 of these species have been found at Sankofa and, generally speaking, in greater New Orleans. And you'll notice these annotations showing that our 2 most common species here at Sankofa, and they're flying over but also feeding over the lagoons at Sankofa, are the evening bat and the Mexican free-tailed bat. And the Mexican free-tailed bat is the bat that is found in giant caves in the southwestern U.S., New Mexico, Texas, etc., in the millions. That is Carlsbad, the large cave outside of San Antonio, and also the Austin Bridge. Now, we don't have any caves here, but they do roost in buildings. Other common species that we have here is the yellow bat and the red bat Seminole bat. Now, I say red bat, Seminole bat, they're closely related species to one another, and we cannot distinguish their calls. But these other bats have been found as well, including the rare big-eared bat, just a few flying overhead, but they occur here as well, and that's obviously really great. We're documenting these species for the very first time here. I mean, that's the whole point of doing this, and we will host some public events, and so just be watching Sankofa to Facebook page and website to see when the public events come. Here's just a few examples of the files that we get off the bat detector. So the bat detector's been there since early 2020, and now we're September heading to October 2020. And you'll notice that these files, if you look at the scale, and I've set them so the scales are the same across the board, that there's sort of unique signatures for the different species. And when we see that bats have very uniform kind of signals, so this is an individual bat sending a set of clicks out, like something like that, okay? So when we see that happening, that means they're just flying overhead. And if we see examples that have to do with feeding, then we can say there's feeding. So red bat, Seminole bats, and also evening bats are two of the most common species that we have, along with yellow bats. And these other species are more rare. You'll notice down here, these big-eared bats have very different looking signals. And they are bats that are also called whispering bats that are found especially in very densely forested areas. Finally, here's the tricolored bat. So this is an individual up at the top that's just flying over very quickly. And then on the bottom, the Mexican free-tailed bat, and it also is one of our most common species at Sankofa, and it's expected because they are common here in urbanized areas of southeastern Louisiana. So anyway, we have great bats at Sankofa. Some of them are just flying overhead, and some of them are using the wetland park to feed on flying insects over those lagoons and vegetation.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hood. That was awesome. Appreciate it. And appreciate you putting a bat monitoring station at our park. We have enjoyed having that there for sure. Thank you. All right, so before I wrap up, I just wanted to point out a couple of volunteer opportunities that we have coming up at the park. So the first one is actually this Saturday. It is on Track It Forward. And we are celebrating National Public Lands Day at the park this Saturday from 9 to 1 by doing some work at the park. So we're going to be building some trails, just pulling some vines down off of some trees, doing some things like that. We will have water. This says snacks, but we just recently got a donation, and so instead of snacks, it's actually going to be little bag lunches for everybody that volunteers with us. So don't want to miss a sandwich and an apple, right? Yeah, okay. And then, obviously we'll have all the tools and everything provided for you. So if you are interested in helping out with that, you can go to Track It Forward and sign up there. And then I'll get the email and I can add it to our internal spreadsheet with Sankofa. So that's the first thing. Then we are working on some sort of long-term regular volunteer opportunities. One is trail maintenance. So as we get these trails built, they obviously will need to be maintained and we will need help doing that. So look for that to be coming up on Track It Forward, where we might have, a monthly trail maintenance day once a month, and, need help with people coming out and just kind of helping us weed the trails and just kind of remulch them or whatever needs to be done at that point. We will be doing park plantings. We just cleared out a tremendous amount of Chinese tallow. If you come to the park, you'll see lots and lots of trees laying down because we just had, we probably cleared out several thousand tallow trees that we just went and just cleared them out as getting ready to start excavation work hopefully soon. And so we obviously want to replant those areas. So we'll be working on park plantings here and there. And then tree surveys. So this also goes along with our sort of stormwater project. And actually, Dr. Hood is helping us with this as well. So we want to get an actual survey of what species of trees do we have and where are they located in the park. And so you can see we're tagging them and numbering them and keeping track of them, because what we want to do is put that information into a software program, excuse me, that's going to help us design a plan with the native trees that will give us the best, I'm so sorry, that will give us, you know, a really good boost to our stormwater storage. So, you know, different native plants are going to help us store more stormwater or less stormwater, depending on where they're planted, what's planted, you know, all of that. So we want to sort of look at that design and make sure that we are maximizing our ability to store that water based on what we're planting. So the first step in that is to see what do we have at the park. So we're going to be doing a tree survey. So look for information about that. And then I have the iNaturalist logo down here because we are trying to develop a iNaturalist guide for the park. I've started one. It's not very big at all right now because it's, you know, I'm trying to build it myself. But if you are out at the park, if you happen to visit the park and you see some animal or plant species of interest and you want to record that information, you can shoot it to me in an email and say, hey, I think I saw this or I think I saw that. If you can take a picture of it, great. And then I'll check out what you sent and then go ahead and send it and load it into the guide. We've already had one master naturalist, Nicole Green, went out there and looked at some plants for us, which we very much appreciate. So that's something you can do. You know, that's also will allow you to maintain that social distance because it'll just be you and your phone. Okay. And that's it. If you're interested in any of those volunteer opportunities or you want more information about anything, there is my email address. And I thank you for the opportunity once again to
Tricia, we've got several questions. Willing to take them?
Oh, absolutely.
Tricia, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We have several questions, if you wouldn't mind listening.
Absolutely.
In Green would like to know, you said that the park was started in 2015, but they wanted to know who was the moving force to get it started.
So the moving force to get it started was my executive director, Rashida Ferdinand. She's the executive director of Sankofa. She started this project and is, you know, the driving force behind Sankofa. She's the founder and executive director of Sankofa. So she got approached by a friend of hers, actually, who said, hey, there's this 40 acres over on the other side of the Lower Nine. Rashida is she was raised in the Lower Ninth Ward. She's a member of that community. And a friend of hers approached her and said, look, there's this 40 acres. I can't handle this project, but I think this would be a great project for you to take on. And at first Rashida was kind of like, well, I don't know if I want to take this on, but then she saw it and thought about it and she absolutely took it on and embraced it completely. And really got the grant, got the wetland ecologist, you know, just started knocking on doors at City Hall and sitting outside of people's offices waiting for them so she could talk to them. I mean, she just really, and she's like that still. I mean, she just really kind of knocks on doors and finds out who she needs to talk to, and then she goes and talks to them, and she just kind of keeps going. And so that's how that all got started. I got involved with Sankofa because I was asked to serve on that advisory board back in 2015. She was putting together a team of people to advise her about the park project. I wasn't working for Sankofa at the time, but she asked me to come in and serve on the advisory board, and then eventually offered me the position of director when she was had that position available when the project grew to that level.
Okay, I got a couple more.
Sure.
Catherine wanted to know the meaning of Sankofa.
Okay, yeah. So let me go back. Okay, so if you look at the logo, you see this the O, it's a bird looking at its back where it's carrying an egg. So it is an African proverb, specifically from Guyana, if I'm correct about that. And it has to do with looking to your past to create and develop your future. So Sankofa the organization was created after Katrina. And it was originally created at that produce market site at the corner of St. Claude and Forstall as a community meeting space, as a place for people to come, artists, musicians, local shrimpers, or people who maybe had local honey, people who could sell their wares there and gather and meet. And it was a way to kind of hold the community together. And that's how Sankofa started. And so that's what the proverb means. That's what the term means. It's looking at your past, or thinking about your past to see your future.
Okay, Craig and May had a couple of suggestions, and I think basically if I cut through it, they're thinking that maybe we ought to develop a partnership with the students at Loyola, in particular the environmental educational students, which sounds like a great idea.
That would be awesome.
I'm going to say the three of y'all need to talk, because that would really be a big help. And anything I can do to facilitate, just let me know.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
Terrence had a couple of questions. He wanted to know, one, is it open to the public? And do you have any kind of easy directions to get there? Mm-hmm. And are there any plans for maybe any kind of bird watching events out there?
Yes. Okay. Yes, it's open to the public. We are at 6401 Florida Avenue. So if you take Claiborne right now, the easiest way is Claiborne into the lower 9. And then you can take Claiborne and turn on, any of the major streets, Caffin or Tupelo, turn left on either of those two streets, take them all the way down till they dead end at Florida, and then hang right and just take a right all the way down to the end of Florida, and you'll see the park. The 2-acre site is going to open up on your left-hand side, and that's 6401 Florida Avenue is the official address of the park. It is absolutely open to the public. Now, when you get there, you're going to see a little chain that goes across the front of the park. That doesn't mean we're closed. That means we're closed to vehicles who like to try and drive in the park and destroy the trail. So, in fact, I just caught some quad runners tearing up my park on my wildlife cameras the other night. So I got to turn those into the very nice police officer who helps us. So don't let that chain fool you. We're open, just walk right past it and enjoy the space. We absolutely, the park, and I can't believe I forgot to mention this when I was talking about wildlife, the park is an amazing place for bird watching. There are so many birds there any time of year. Yes, and we have done bird workshops there. Dr. Peter Yackey came out last November and did a fantastic workshop for us. And we saw all kinds of amazing things, and he called some birds down to us that he saw. So it's a fantastic space for bird watching. A couple of weeks ago, as hard as it was for me to believe, a bald eagle flew right over my head. Now that's very rare, and I would say that's like, seeing a unicorn, but it flew. I couldn't believe it. If it hadn't flown right over my head, I wouldn't have believed that you would see that out there. But I saw it with my own eyes. So herons, egrets, all kinds of hawks, kites, all kinds of songbirds. And then when things migrate through there, different times of the year. So you'll see all kinds of things out there.
One other question we got. Angel wanted to know if dogs are allowed.
Yeah, we allow dogs as long as they're, leashed, and you just pick up after your pal if he leaves a gift. We just, but yeah, as long as they stay leashed.
The final thing I wanted to mention, and perhaps we could bug May a little more about this too, with your wanting to document a lot of the species out there, having something like a BioBlitz might really be a good idea to get a few small groups out there to, tag as many things as they could through iNaturalist and, develop a good repertoire of what you got.
Yeah.
It's something we can work on.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, Mary.
Janelle, did you have anything else that you wanted to ask?
Mary, I'll add one thing real quick. That if we do some similar events like you did this past weekend, that could build Tricia's iNaturalist list, and it would serve almost like a BioBlitz type event. It would have to be done throughout the year because of the different birds, the different critters that are here at the different times, but at least it would be something to get it started. And then you could build upon it with different events in the future. That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be wonderful.
Thank you so much, Tricia. Janelle, did you want any other, or have any other questions?
I only wanted to remind everyone to go to Track It Forward to log your hours for attending this. And if anyone wants to coordinate a BioBlitz at Sankofa, just get in touch with me and we'll get that started.
Great. And don't forget about Saturday, volunteer.
Yes.
All right, great. Well,
Thank
thank you again. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.